Hey, y'all, just a heads up. This is going to be a really candid conversation. Hopefully, no punches pulled here, but I'm super excited to be talking to my friend, Adrian Garcea, coming all the way from Canada. Adrian, what have you been up to lately? I know you are the head coach of Roundnet Canada going into Worlds, but you've also been doing a lot of other sports stuff.
Yeah, I am. I was the president of Roundnet Canada for the last 3 years. I'm now the head coach going into Worlds this year. And part of that decision was because I started a new job. I work full time for the Canadian Olympic Committee as their video content producer. And so I've been in sports for a long time. I spent 4 years at university, captaining and being the president at my Ultimate Frisbee club at Ryerson. And then I did work for Golf Canada, Much Music, and finally landed here with the Team Canada. And I'm actually flying to Paris in 4 days from when this was recorded. And I'll be off the grid for the next 3 weeks as I work straight through, but it's going to be a blast. So excited. And then I'll meet up with you and meet you in London. So that'll
I'm
be
excited.
super fun experience, just like back-to-back world events and seeing the sports world like as a whole. And then I'll get to really compare it to like what we're having for world.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone always talks about that. When's Spikeball going to be in the Olympics? But it's not gonna be in the Olympics, guys.
Not for a long time,
For a
if
very
ever. There's like
long
there's just so much work to do.
that like infrastructure's like the biggest gap, I think, for us in Roundnet.
Yeah, I think especially just like there's so much excitement about something like a world championship. Like, oh, I want to win the world championship. I want to see the world championship. But really, like the best thing that can be done for Roundnet is like every single person that's playing right now getting one more person to play Roundnet, because that's more people playing. That's more people growing like their local communities, and ultimately it means there's more people to do the work that is being done by all these different clubs and organizations.
Yeah, it's there's tons of different benefits of like these like having the infrastructures, and it's like a lot of those benefits are things that like people, especially in the Discord, like the Discord, me and you love to talk about the Discord because it gets us going sometimes, seeing people like talk about these little things that they think like would just change the world. But those are more quality of life fixes, and they're not infrastructure fixes or growth fixes. And so like the benefits that a lot of these national sports organizations out there that I've worked with is like they have a lot more of these quality of life things, but at the same time too, like they do still also miss some of the minor quality of life things, because like you only have so many people working on these things that like not everyone is perfect. And so sometimes the tiny things do get missed under the rug, but then sometimes like you have great experiences and you are in a great venue with great lighting, and that goes a long way to being able to market something better versus like the lights didn't turn on, I think, for the third place game. Like it was super dark, right? This past weekend in Chicago. And that's just like a quality of life thing. Like we're just lucky to be out here playing this great game, smacking around a rubber ball on a trampoline. Like if
Oh,
we like
the lights definitely came on. I think exposure was really low.
oh it was just Jacob. But same thing,
It
like
was it was just low exposure, right? Because one person's trying to run a stream
exactly. Jacob's
on
wearing three
on like
hats.
a
Yeah, so it's like those are just quality of life things that like would it
sure.
really help grow the sport if the exposure was watched the whole time and change the amount of people that would click on a stream? That wouldn't change the amount of people that would click on the stream, the quality of the stream. We still need to get people to click on the stream, right?
Yeah.
So the quality of the stream won't make a difference in how many people stay in to watch it. If not enough people are interested in competitive spikeball, why would they watch it? We have so many competitive players that don't even watch it. Like that's kind of sorry, I'm off.
I gotta jump in quickly and just say like,
Yeah.
well, you've mentioned like Spikeball a bunch of times. It's like I'll say I'm gonna call it Roundnet for this conversation. I don't know if that's like just a turn of phrase for you, or if or if it's like
Yeah, I'm
the
bad with
broader picture.
the,
It's just
yeah,
but yeah,
separated
just
this
for
word.
everybody else like follows. Like obviously that's a whole other conversation about like the trademark of the word. But yeah, just the community that we have, this sport that we're trying to build. The big thing is like we need to be focused on growing and connecting the community, and I think that's maybe one big challenge that I cite when I think about growing the sport is not about trying to fix one or two things that would make one or two things better, but thinking about how much we're working in different directions, and that if we were just working a little bit more collectively, curious if you see this in your role on working with other sports in Canada, that these other sports, there is this culture of, hey, we're growing our national community, we're growing the sport together. And by leaning into that team mindset for growing a sport, that makes things better. If there's an example of it, great. But just if you even see like that culture of, we're working on sport development, we're not working on my sport and your sport development.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've really loved about joining Team Canada is like we truly are like Team Canada. Like it's always about the team, and everyone is a part of that team, and we all are backing these Olympians that are going out there to make us proud and compete for our flag. And so the team aspect is such a big thing because the team doesn't just equate to the people that I work with in my office or directly on a day-to-day basis. It's like we work with the NSOs on a regular basis. And so when we are able to help each other, bring each other up, like it makes all of our jobs easier when we are working in that streamline, and it just so many more things can happen, and you'd be surprised like how someone can easily solve your problem because they've dealt with it before or they're working on the same thing, and all of a sudden the puzzle pieces fit and it's just this beautiful image that can come. And so it's something that happens quite a bit, but still at the same time too, there's always those roadblocks. Like sometimes we are not on the same track, and it happens in Roundnet a lot. Like there's a lot of us doing great things in different parts of the world, different parts of the countries, different parts of North America, that like the more we are able to just come together and like move in the same wavelength would just make it's crazy how easy things are when you just like talk to someone who's thought about this problem like immensely, and you're like, oh wow, that was such an easy fix.
Absolutely. I know one thing we really wanted to touch on was just like the state of expectations, reality, and maybe how big that gap is in your opinion. We're mostly experts in North American Roundnet, so if you want to speak to mostly that, I'd love to hear how you're feeling about it, especially given you've now stepped down from working, on the board of Roundnet Canada and are now just working in like a not smaller, but maybe less demanding capacity as head coach for the national team. Like what are maybe some things that you're seeing and whether they've changed in regards to like what's happening around pushing the sport forward versus what we think is happening?
Yeah, I think like from personal story, like I made my decision to step down from Roundnet Canada because I was about to start the new job and have a lot less hours on my hand, and I was valuing, will it be worth doing both at the same time, because it is a lot of hours for no pay. Everyone in Roundnet doesn't make money for what they do. Everybody does it out of the kindness of their hearts because they love the sport. And I went to the championship to have some big conversations with some key players that were key stakeholders that were there. We had some great
very
talks.
corporate speak.
Because sure, I talked to some players there, but like I told, one of the big conversations I had was telling Vinny like, hey, I'm stepping down from Roundnet Canada, and like it was I honestly I cried when I told Vinny that. Like it was a big thing, because of the conversations that I had with different stakeholders that were there about the direction of the sport, like what they were planning with their direction. And for me, it got dark. There's a few different things that I see us not moving in the right direction towards, and I'm predicting next year is going to be a little tougher on the sport, from a population base of our top players. Like we've seen it happen 3 years in a row now, where we lost Ryder after he was on top, Fred and Buddy. I'm pretty sure, actually don't full quote me, but half quote me here on one of them came out and said like I won like 6 tournaments, but I still was down money on the whole year, which is like, there's some contender players that, and I had this talk with some of them on my way home from the championship, that like they thought these players were making money, like an earnable wage, like because they were pro players. But pro is just a nice word that we put on our top division, but they're not actually getting paid on a regular basis enough to be able to do the traveling on a regular basis. And I know we've talked about that, of how like the traveling is a tough find, and like this is kind of more of a competitive hobby than it is a professional sport.
Yeah, I mean, like the word aspirational, I think, has to be put in front of like Roundnet as a sport, where it is right now. And something I struggle with personally, again, I also still am serving on the board of directors for USA Roundnet, all volunteer. I spent my own gas money to go to nationals to then help run it last month, and among a lot of other like community contributions that are local too. Like I'm always asking myself, like, do I have time to do this? And if I don't, like, I try not to beat myself up over it, because I do it because I love it and I enjoy pushing the sport forward. But I also know that no one's paying me to do almost anything that I'm doing for Roundnet. And something that I also feel like I might contribute to is like contributing to building this facade of like, if people see me doing Roundnet things and I'm not saying out loud, hey guys, I don't make anything doing this, I'm just having fun, just like you are having fun playing, that maybe the expectations start to inflate beyond the reality of where we are. The same for players who are expecting that the pros are getting paid, when really we're just like creating this, I'd call it a facade, to say that like it's a pro sport versus, again, aspiring for it to be a pro sport. And it's one thing to, I think it's totally noble and allowed to aspire for it to become more professional in all the ways. And at the same time, we do, I think, benefit from being really candid together as a community about where we are, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. And something you mentioned, and we talked about, everyone's been talking about a lot in the community, is this maybe hyper obsession on high level players, hyper obsession on growing the pro level, when really, like, I think you might agree that our attention is really in the wrong place. It needs to be really hyper focused on the local community, because the way for people to afford to travel around the country could come from a lot of places, but one place it really might reasonably come from in a sustainable way would be having local sport clubs that can fund the top players to travel around and play the other top players. If you've got no local community supporting you, like you said, it's just a hobby, and your number one sponsor is going to be your day job or some other really fortunate, circumstance where you can just not really need to cover costs for things. If you've got, a couple sponsors, that's great. So yeah, I'm happy to like push that forward. And I think the biggest thing, like on my end, is like getting everybody on the same page on that. And in particular, like when we think about like, how do we build this infrastructure? How do we get things together more? I think we're making progress. Like Roundnet Canada has a membership formally now, and there's a national series for Canada this year. There's national series in the US. But just like all those steps can really only happen as fast as, in my opinion, not you or me like wanting them to happen, but really happen as fast as the entire community saying, let's do this thing. Let's actually grow Roundnet and stop like pretending that Roundnet has made it just because we labeled some players as pros.
100%. But I think too, like in the reality, like we've seen a lot in the Discord this week, like lots of different chatter about different takes of how it needs to grow. And I think there is like little bits of good in everyone's long discussions that we've been having. And I think like right now, off the dome, I think our best shot is, I think Fred might have pitched this before, the major style, having just like 4 key events with different sponsors. So Spikeball runs one major, you can pull in another sponsor or a local org to run their 4, and you do like a regional thing to qualify, and then you only have to you travel way less, and that way it makes it more sustainable for players to play. And I think that is a direction that we could go. But I also think Thomas made a good point of it has to be Spikeball or nothing. Like as long as Spikeball is still running their tour series, it would put up a big challenge.
I'm interested
for us
that you think
to run
that.
a separate challenge, because, well, if Spikeball's throwing money at it, I think it's very difficult to maintain sponsors. That's a struggle we're finding here up in Canada. Is we've been able to get sponsors, but to maintain them and get them to sign on again and again has been difficult, because we've struggled with the return on investment for them. And I mean, we do play with demographic that's broke university students. So that's why if Spikeball's still here throwing break prize pool, the top players will continue to go there, and players will always follow suit. And that's kind of where I think if Spikeball were to offer USAR, Roundnet Canada, say, hey, we would be open to taking a step back and sponsoring one of the events, would you guys take on the rest of the tour series? I think that would be a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. What's interesting there is, like, I do mention when I think about growing the sport, my perspective is like, as a community, we should be really driving things forward together. And yes, like having as many companies, whether it's Spikeball, Premier Spike, any other manufacturers, or like affiliated brands with Roundnet, wanting to push the sport forward together, like that will get us the farthest, the fastest. But like if Spikeball wants to spend its resources in a specific way, like it does set the bar kind of high when I think about, like you mentioned, like the cost of replacement for a Canadian Tour Series or a US Tour Series, where people like ask the question in a very funny way to be like, what's the point? And it's like, what's the point of the Canadian National Championship? I mean, I guess if being a national championship doesn't mean anything to you, then absolutely nothing. And the same goes for the U.S. National Championship. It's like, if you don't want to be the U.S. National Champion, I guess it's not worth anything to you. But it is very interesting how the players, the community want this change. And yet at the same time, the culture that I like grew up in and kind of like my like stripes and Roundnet have been around getting involved and like volunteering for a long time before like USA Roundnet was even like conceived. But the culture was always that like we as players should be kind of driving the sport forward. And all of a sudden now, like this new age of players, I'd call it like post-COVID quarantine players, also want that, but are lacking the context that like for that to happen, it requires them to like stand up and like get in the pool. So that's like my big charge to players. But you're right, like if like we're not going to solve the tour series today, so like I feel like that's like a little bit of a long-winded conversation to go down, but just like it could look a lot of different ways. But ultimately, I think even if we had this situation where there were only 4 big events as marketed and agreed upon somehow, you know, with a bunch of coordination between all of the national governing bodies, with all the, you know, manufacturers together, that still means that for the rest of the year, there's all these open weekends where as players, as consumers, we still have this cultural problem where as players, consumers, we really want to travel and just go around the country and just play with other really good players. And separate from all of the logistics of getting a tour series that looks like the Spikeball Tour Series or a North American Tour Series or anything in between, or multiple series, which is also, you know, totally valid in some way, but just maybe not as sustainable, is this idea that high-level players kind of need to be playing against high-level players to keep up. And if they don't, they fall behind. So if like everybody else goes to play at this random tournament that nobody else cares about, and you don't go, you're falling behind, and you're not going to do all that next big major tournament, using air quotes for anybody who's not looking at the video. Pay attention. But yeah, that's my take is like, you can't really solve for that problem. We need as a community to collectively be more interested in turning around and like saving like $500 and growing our community at home at the same time. And if you're wondering if like I'm just like spouting, like I'm very focused on like the local DC community, and would love to welcome you anytime to come do that. Anyhow,
Players.
That was mostly me ranting.
Players,
yeah, you go for it. Take the wheel.
You talk about the players and like what they want and how they want it, and like I've said it before, like players want their icing and their cake, but they don't want to bake it. Like they want what they want,
Which
but
I
they're not
love
ready
that, by
to
the
get
way.
the trenches. Yeah, like
Yeah,
with some of the discussions that was happening this week, and
you're
I think
really
it was
forcing me
Dom
to publish
Orlando.
this like this week.
Yeah, sorry. Some of the that happened
I'm just
this
gonna
week,
upload
July
this straight up.
17th.
That's fine.
Dom Orlando was out there talking about it, and then you're seeing someone talk to the people about it who's been in the trenches. He's on the front lines, putting in the work. He sees what's going on, and he's arguing with players who. There's some players who've ran tournaments, but until you run multiple tournaments in different places, at different levels, at different stakes, that's when you
Yeah.
like find out like it does take a lot of hours. Like it's not just like you just like snap your fingers and 40 nets are out there and sponsors and lunch is provided at the Washington tournament that I went to. Shouts out Ben, he had lunch for us.
Oh.
But it's just like Christian Bennett's very motivated right now, it seems, and I'm super stoked to hear that and see that, and I'm hoping that he can feel that motivation. But if he wants to run like his own series, it's like if you're ready to put in the hours, it's like, hey, why don't you talk to USAR and make it happen on that bigger scale? Like we can all help each other.
Okay, you can call me out as soon as anybody says something like that. And actually, we talked about this before. It's like, man, you just wish people reach out to Roundnet Canada to ask for help. It's like as soon as anybody does anything like that in a public forum, the first thing I do is say, hey, would you like to work on that for USA Roundnet in a way that like connects more dots and gets more people together? So like for me, actually, I had a lot of really good conversations with Christian when he was preparing to run this tournament before it, just from like the national series side of things. Obviously, it was a hybrid national series event / like Spikeball Tour Series Challenger. But like the loose quote that he said to me was just like, wow, I didn't realize like there's all this stuff that goes into running a tournament. And I appreciated that from him, which like he'd only run that one tournament. And obviously a lot of things went well for that to go really well, which is great. He did a lot of hard work and a lot of people did too. A lot of people helped him out. But just like understanding that tournaments don't just happen as first half of the battle, but then secondly, it's like, yeah, if we wanted all the tournaments to look like that one, we can't have every tournament be the first big North American tournament of the year. So that's not possible. So there's just like lots of logistical things to make something of that effectiveness work. And again, from a cultural standpoint, if we decided we wanted that to be exactly what the tournament looked like, where we just had 4 or 5 of those, great. I'd love to actually pull up a question because someone was asking you and me about like, hey, what's the benefit of like, we could have a US tour series, we could have a North American tour series, we can have an international tour series. I'm curious like what your thoughts are on like those 3 levels of scope for a national series or an international series or a North American series. What maybe some ups and downs could be for each of those.
I think the hardest one would be like the true international series. I think
Agreed.
We are seeing it like STS. STS is having struggle with it in terms of finding the right balance in point structure and like making the STS work within their structure of their tournament. So because we're not getting consistent flow over, it's hard to truly have a truly international series. I think a North American series just makes sense because we are so close. We are going to travel to each other's tournaments regardless. So if we have the infrastructure up here to run a bomb tournament in Mississauga with MRC and Peter, who's been throwing STSs successfully for 3 years now, why wouldn't we add it to the stop? And if there's enough player base here that it can fund itself on the advanced and intermediate level so that it takes more fees away or brings more money in, that we can run a cleaner, more quality of life tournament, we should. Like it just, if the structure's there, we should be tapping into as many of the spots as possible. Quebec's got a big spot. And I think that's a big thing for like tournaments and deciding where tournaments should be is like, if your tournament can't run with 70% of the people being within driving distance, then your community needs some work, because that's how tournaments should be run, is like 70% of the people should be coming from your community within driving distance, because otherwise it's not sustainable. Like we can't be asking players to fly in $500 for a weekend to fly in, accommodations, food, the whole expenses.
Yeah,
it's just not
no amount of sponsors can make that make sense. Like the community is going to need to fund Roundnet in that way, whether it is the local clubs and communities like having the like, you know, club members and then that funding events being put on, or there's so many variables that go into that. But yeah, I actually fully agree with you. I think the amount of opportunity for, I know Roundnet Mexico is a little bit like younger in its not just player, but also it's like more infrastructure as like a national governing body. Is North America should be working together on just about everything for that reason. I think like one really like funny tidbit that like people probably know that I work on USA Roundnet. It's just like that like, hey, why is like this Vancouver tournament not giving me like a rankings bump on the US rankings? It's just like, well, like because it's not because it's not in the US. It's not in the US, but also like it wasn't sanctioned, and because it wasn't sanctioned, people didn't like have to get memberships, people didn't get insured, we didn't cover them, we're not going to put into this ranking process, and just like all those like formalities that go into supporting a US event. It's like, oh yeah, I am like still very much a fan of like if we had a North American Roundnet player zone or something like it, similar to what Roundnet Germany has done. I've said that a lot of places. I'll say it again here just because maybe to help like get it out there. That'd be I think optimal for as a tool to enable and unlock like North American Roundnet to do more things together. The problem, of course, is that takes serious work. It's not lost on me. I've like worked on tech and development projects before. And I know I'm not the guy to do that all by myself, and no one really should do that all by themselves. It probably should be a couple of people doing it and then finding a way to compensate them in, you know, in the most generous way possible with limited funds, limited fees. I think for me, like I think about whether it's infrastructure or tournament settings or growing clubs and communities. Like I know I want these things, and I think where like I have like a different perspective than most players, and it's because of a couple of things. It's because I've been around the sport a long time, but also because like I'm fortunate that I am out of school and I do have a job. It's like for me, I look at Round and I say, I want that thing to be better. I'll put my time into it, but also like I will spend money on Roundnet. And I think right now, weigh this take with me. Like I would say the average person who's playing Roundnet, independent of their ability to spend on it, doesn't actually value Roundnet. Like you ask them like, what is Roundnet worth to you? And like they don't think it's worth very much. And the reason they don't think it's worth very much is because they're not actually going to like vote with their dollars on a club, a local club membership, which most people don't have local clubs, but maybe you've got a college club, you could have like university club dues, or paying more than like a certain amount of dollars per person to play in a Roundnet tournament for 12 hours, or, more than however much to be part of your national governing body so that governing body can invest in all these infrastructure things we're talking about. I just don't see it. And I think part of the problem has been that historically we had a company in Spikeball pouring all this money into the sport, which was really nice. But because we thought the sport was like basically being paid for, we just took it for granted and didn't actually value that we actually need to be putting some skin in the game to make Roundnet grow. So that's my take is like, we don't actually value Roundnet.
That's actually so spot on. Like I haven't really heard it in those words of like Roundnet or Spikeball has put so much money into Roundnet before that we had this just like beautiful quality of life. All the like we could smell the roses all the time, but like now, like as we're seeing, like Spikeball is having some business troubles. Like that's just like you could just look at them from the outside in. Like the Mammoth set was a lot they invested, and they're having to make decisions to make up those monies. And we've seen the changeover in their tournament department. Shouts out Andrew, he's doing great work. That's like he's
doing
on
too much work. He has too much work to do, is what I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like, and it's stuff that he did not when he first signed up. It's not what he signed up for. But he loves the sport that he said, I'll keep it going. Like I'll keep doing it and doing it to his best of his abilities.
Yeah, he's getting paid. He's just not getting paid as much as like someone who would be working on that in like another sports setting. And that's not a knock on Spikeball not paying him. It's not going just like where the sport is a reality check, I think, again.
Exactly. It's spot on.
Definitely. And I just want to like flag like one other thing here. I think it's just, this is a specific, right? But I'll just drop it just because I feel like it's a similar, like, we don't actually value Roundnet, is my dear friend and friend of the community is Albert Tong, pretty much volunteered a full-time job to like do video documentary work last year. And I watch it. Like I worked alongside him like a lot of days, and then he worked without me because I was busy or I was doing some other Roundnet project a lot of days. I asked people like, what is Roundnet work worth to the community? And you look at the comment section and it says, this is what we need. Like, we need more of this. When's the next thing? I'm so excited. Like, Albert, you're a genius. And I'll mostly like step to the side to take like partial credit for some of the stuff I've contributed to. But it's just like, we look at someone like Albert and we say, wow, what if we could just unlock your ability to just worry about Roundnet and just producing amazing stuff? And I don't know, maybe make stuff that's not just long form. So we can also help with like, short form, getting more eyeballs on Roundnet broadly. And like, I don't think it's like a very imaginative take to say that would be really good for discoverability and also just building out more stories to follow and become a fan and enjoy watching Roundnet. But then you ask the person who says, we need this and we love this and we want this, and you ask that person what their spend is on Roundnet. And they're spending all this money, flights, hundreds of dollars. They're crashing Airbnbs. They're spending money on tournaments, maybe multiple times a month they're doing this. And this is not an ask for you to give Roundnet work money, but you can use it that way if you want to. That average person has not contributed to Roundnet work in any like monetary way. And like now like we're just sitting here like, well, we know what Albert's capable of. We saw it, and we know that he would only get better at it. And yet like we just don't value Roundnet work is what would be my charge to the community. And again, very like self-involved gripe in that I love working on Roundnet content and I've learned a lot, but like putting myself to the side, like that's I think how a lot of other Roundnet projects have gone and looked. You can talk about Tops, you can talk about a lot of other content creators. Not that the expectation is that people give those people money, but just that to divorce saying, wow, I really appreciate this and I really like this, from I want to make sure that this actually sticks around, because we've just hoped that Spikeball would just give everybody money to do it all is like not sustainable in any angle, and just speaks to, again, I said we get Canada. It just speaks to us not actually caring about Roundnet in the way that we say that we do.
Yeah, 100%. And like Albert did incredible work, but like you said, we've seen it with Tops. Albert got a full-time job, right? And so he moved on. Well, not
He
necessarily
had a
moved
full-time job
on,
also before. He
but
like Albert had a full-time job before also. He just is now more busy. It was the same thing as you would like,
yeah,
well, I'm gonna have more hours, so like
exactly. You can only
I,
apply so much
I I can only do this. I can only do this for fun so much. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
Top
hard to go that
saw that
hard.
he wasn't. It wasn't sustainable for him for how much he was investing and not getting on return. And I mean,
Yeah,
like, we are seeing some hungry talent. Momentum Media is coming out, and they really love the sport right now. They're going all out, but there is that side of like you keep that
I
flame
think
burning
this
as long as
is
possible.
yeah, and I think like what's great is like Brock is actually funding it basically through like jersey sales. So it's like
Mhm.
there is like he's selling something, right? Versus like for Roundnet Work, it wasn't like, hey, we're selling something. We're like, hey, well, we're selling exclusive content, but that's okay. Like I didn't mean for this to be an ad, but it's more of a gripe. But like separate from content though, it's the overall culture around it, right? Like think about tournament directors that come and go because you mentioned actually some like people are thinking about like let's just give all the money away at tournaments, and it's like, well, that's not like where the value is being created. And um, I'm not someone who pays myself a lot when I run tournaments, but like I've more and more tried to grapple with if I don't pay myself to run tournaments and I don't want to run tournaments, like we're in a tough spot because no one else is going to just step in and just run tournaments. We have to hope we're like relying on the goodness of the right person at the right time showing up and volunteering. Um, and that's not like the infrastructure of a sport being we really hope volunteers show up at the right time to do the right thing, and also like they'll be happy to do it for no pay also for like indefinite periods of time is like a really tough spot for us to be in as a culture. So in my experience at least, like I've reflected on that a lot, not from the sentiment of wow I really want to get paid more for Roundnet, and actually I'll try to talk about myself more another time because I feel like I've already done enough of that today. But just generally the concept of anyone doing something in Roundnet, the way for them to keep doing it would be making sure that they are supported in doing it, and not just supported in a hey I really appreciate it, but it's supported in a we can pay for this person's time. Um, and if we want to get someone who's like really good at it, like we need to pay them more for their time. Otherwise, we're limited to just like the lowest common denominator, which um, I won't like say happens all the time around it, but like it definitely happens where we're just stuck with whatever we get, and like you kind of like can't complain because we like you can't complain if you're not putting in your own time or like supporting the work being done by your community leaders locally. I think again I want to like really emphasize the local side of this is like yes there's big picture things, but local community efforts are like very under sourced and under sustainably like funded. So
Yeah,
that's
like
where I worry a lot.
I shared this story with you about there's a local community here near me that was looking at running a tournament, and they were looking at putting money that they had saved up over multiple tournaments into a big prize pool at one of their upcoming tournaments. And I said, guys, like you're going to throw this community money into this to pay two players to show up to your tournament because let's be honest, not a lot of our players here are as good as them. But if Etienne sees this big prize pool, Etienne might come on back over to Ontario, take the prize money, and then that money just flows out of your community. And what if you just put that money into your after party or having food at lunch for everyone or more quality of life things that make people enjoy your tournament, make the culture at the tournament much more
Mm-hmm.
enjoyable, and that would go so much farther for maintaining your player base than that big prize pool. So it is that balance of like where is the money most valuable? Is it most valuable in the pockets of the top players, or is it most valuable not necessarily paying your tournament directors, but allowing them to do more beneficial things to the quality of life of the whole
Yeah,
event?
I would even think like outside the quality of life, the whole event, right? Like I think about uh something called the infinite game. I don't know if you're familiar with like that concept. Um, but for anybody who's not familiar and is listening, like Roundnet is a finite game. Like you win or lose the game. But something like an infinite game would be like any friendship you have or a hobby you have, a passion. And the goal of the infinite game is to just keep playing. And when I think about like growing Roundnet and doing Roundnet for me, like I view Roundnet as an infinite game for myself that I just want to keep playing, having fun and enjoying experiences with lovely people around the world. And for that community, it might not just be about that tournament being the best thing possible. It might be about thinking about how can we put money from this tournament back into the tournament, but the way they've saved up funds also, maybe they can use that to spend on some other community engagement opportunities to, get a youth clinic paid for and fly Etienne in to do a clinic instead of giving Etienne money to show up and win a tournament, right? Like just the way that the funds are allocated in a way that like is in my mind prioritized on sustaining and growing things long term versus just like flash in the pan, like, wow, that was really memorable when we gave a bunch of money to that one person. And
Also,
I
for the
will say,
record,
and I'm curious to explore more. Like some players who do win some amounts of money are like, this has made a difference on my ability to play in the sport. So I'm not saying that like it's useless. I think like a lot of times we just like spam the button of like give the top player the most money possible, and like that's the only thing we need for the sport.
yeah. Also, for the record, Etienne has never come in and taken money from us. I just used him because
Oh, it
Etienne
was just a
stay at my
hypothetical
house.
because he's a really good player. He's a really good
Yeah, he's a
player
really good player that in our community would come in and win a tournament here because he's one of the best.
because he's really
So
good.
all love,
Yeah.
and I love you.
If Etienne's listening to this, I would love that. Etienne, please comment or like DM me if you've listened to any of this. That'd be crazy.
If he finds his shout out hidden in
Yo,
there,
guys, comment Etienne in the comments just to make sure Etienne finds out about this. Like you can timestamp it to you guys. It's a more of like an HTR like vibe where they would like ask people to comment the weirdest stuff.
I wanted to share a story.
Please.
That I don't know if I've shared with you.
We're at, yeah, you gotta tell me a bedtime story right now. It's very late in the podcast.
But it's so like Roundnet for me, like the last year has been such a roller coaster. When I was first, I tried to run, or my first nationals I tried to run, ended up turning into the Maple Cup, got so much backlash about it. And then I was honest with my community about like, hey, like I was the only person running Roundnet Canada at the time. My tournament director wanted to quit that week because they were just sick of people complaining, and I got very blunt with people that year, explaining like, guys, like it's just me, like you're messaging, sending emails about being mad, but like I'm the only person on the other side. Like it's not like we're an organization, we don't have funding. And a year later, we threw a
And like,
very
you're
successful.
not getting paid. You're not getting paid with the funding. Also, is like a reminder I want to throw out.
The
It's like
money all
the fund
goes
comes in.
into
The
the
funds come
bank
in so
and
you can
comes
put it
back
into
into
like things happening. Yeah,
100%.
providing service to people. It does not go to the volunteers on NGBs.
But the following year, I ran the nationals in Whistler, which was a great success. We were able to do so much quality of life things. It was such a balance, and it was just like such a up and down. And then I go to the championship, and like I told you, I had those dark conversations, big stakeholder stuff. And then on the rise back up, I signed up to join as head coach for this year and be an advisor to the board. And then I got to attend the biggest high school tournament I've ever attended. And are you still there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm with you. I was just glitching out.
Oh, no problem. I got to attend the biggest high school tournament I think ever. There was 200 teams signed up for this high school tournament here in our local community, Durham, ran by Mike Murray, a local gym teacher, and seeing 400 kids on a turf field playing Roundnet was just like an incredible sight to see that like gave me hope again for this sport, that there is a way for this sport to get there. Like it is possible. It is something that's doable. And we can build that infrastructure.
It takes a lot of work.
It takes a
Yeah.
lot of work. Mike put in so much work, like groundwork in the school system that of his local school system, that gym teachers have access to nets. Kids are playing at recess, and that they were able to do this tournament during a school day and have all these kids come out to it. And it's like just it was so
That's
beautiful to
sick.
see like the next
I
generation.
saw a clip of that. Shout out, Mike. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm still just like knocking on doors. I'm not a gym teacher, so I'm just like asking gym teachers, and I'm getting some cold shoulders. So if anybody's got advice, I guess I might have to hit up Mike to get some advice on how to navigate that.
Yeah, it takes that
because,
fire though. Like we talked about with
I would love to volunteer. Yeah, I'd love to volunteer. Yeah, you have to have that fire to just get it done. And yeah, I think like what's really cool about someone like Mike is just like he's not doing that so people are like, wow, like look at this thing. Like he's doing it because he knows it's going to be impactful. And I think part of the challenge with like where we obsess as like a community is we obsess over the highest level because that's where a lot of attention goes. And like it's not a bad thing to be paying attention to the highest level players. Like you should be learning from them. Hopefully they're setting a good example as best as they're able to. With again, they're just hobbyists really. Like very few of them are actually pros, so I can't ask too much of them personally. But to the extent that like they're the top level players, like hopefully they're inspiring people to want to build up towards it and not just obsess over driving to be that individual player yourself and like not looking around and doing I'd say like just thankless things that could be more impactful.
Yeah,
Like this
it's
isn't that thankless. Like I'm like venting publicly. Like
yeah,
this
that's
is
all we're doing.
like this is not like this is pretty self indulgent if I'm being honest. Like I've
Yeah,
thoroughly enjoyed it. But like most of the thankless stuff that I do is the stuff I don't talk to people about, and like um, I think we just will benefit as a sport if we do more of the silent work that like is really important. And I hope to do a little bit more of like amplifying those stories, like amplifying what's happening in like youth schools, youth Roundnet stuff in Canada. Like that's sick because
yeah. It's
that
still
actually moves the needle.
it definitely moves the needle. I do think there's like a lot of bigger factors that play into it, and it was a big learning experience for it because find trouble. We weren't able to translate them into our local circuit, and get them to come out and play
Right,
in our
because
circuit.
there aren't all those like steps and pieces from play in a local event to like become a like there probably aren't youth divisions at like the Ontario circuit. If I had to
Yeah,
guess, there's
we
probably intermediate
never
level
had it.
stuff and like
We've done
that
it
there might be a
once.
comp for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
just
that's where
having a clear roadmap for players progressing into their local clubs, and then some of the players in the local clubs going out and playing in a Canadian series or playing in a hypothetical. I mean, we have a North American Tour series right now. It's just Spikeball runs it. It's called the STS.
yeah
And then they import a couple of European teams. So it'd be my assessment of it. Just as you mentioned, like the STS has a lot of really good things, but like there's not much international competition between Europe and the US except for the championship. So it's almost like a tournament of champions type thing, which is it's not worth playing too many semantics there. But just like for like you mentioned, like getting actually like that growth out of the 400 youth players, having a clear vision of, hey, if you like 400 people go to tournament, like someone's gonna be like, I don't want to do this again, but like there's got to be 20 kids that are like, I want more. What's next? And having a clear answer for them of, hey, like come to like this like adult club session is like a little confusing. So having like the youth clubs and having like a collective like Ontario system where you've got like I think about like a mostly European clubs in football in particular, where it's like you've got like the junior like was like Arsenal like U18 club or whatever.
yeah
I apologize to anybody that's like a Manchester fan. I don't know the Premier League very well, so I just named Arsenal. But right, like that's what it needs to be for Roundnet to like really like be like successful. Is there needs to be Roundnet Ontario that has the adult leagues and the clubs, and everybody that's over 18 is or maybe over 21 is like paying their dues, and then it subsidizes for like the U18 kids to come in and just grow and develop. And yeah, like it also can't be just about tournaments. I know some people really like to focus on the tournaments. Tournaments of any kind, I think like there's an over obsession there. Like there needs to be so much more of an obsession with just playing,
yeah
just playing Roundnet to play. Like people ask me about like personally if I'm like playing tournament stuff. I'm like, I play tournaments that you don't need to worry about because I don't play the big ones. But like I'm playing plenty of Roundnet. Don't you guys worry. Like I'm having a great time playing still. I think if I wasn't playing as much or if I wasn't playing at all, I would be doing way less because I'd be getting not enough enjoyment out of it on the flip side from all the projects and passion projects I take on. So
yeah
yeah,
I
that's my vision at least for Roundnet growing is much more club focused, and trying to give for those clubs like something to work on is also a passion.
Yeah, I had a moment like that in this past indoor season. I played a tournament and I played against Brock, and it was like my first tournament that I had played in like 5 months. I'm not a traveling player anymore, so I don't play much. And I was playing against Brock, and we were getting skunked. Like Brock was playing with Jared, like they were projected top seed in the tournament, and I'm playing with Shaquille, who's moved on to pickleball. And
Mm-hmm.
Brock goes, dude, I've never seen you have this much fun while you're playing. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't care how we do today. Like, I'm just here to like hang out with my friends, make some cool plays, and then, you know, just like have a good time. And it's just like the sport outside of the competitive side is so different. And like, I saw that with the kids at this tournament. Like, I'll remember this forever. There was these two girls who I think were in grade 5, and they were like 3 foot nothing, and they were playing in the elementary division, so they were playing grade 8s. And there's these two guys who look like they just came out of the gym playing these like 6'6" versus these like 3 foot. And these two girls were having the time of their life. I think the score was like 21-5, but they were just like they're having fun, enjoying the game for what it's like naturally is. And it's just like that, finding your athleticism and making cool plays that you don't expect to happen. And that's like what the game is like about, like at its core.
Yeah. I feel like that's a great place to end this. Is there anything else that you want to tack on though? Trying to leave some light in people's eyes about Roundnet.
No, I think we've talked a lot about it. Although we did talk a bit before this, just catching up before we dove into this. So we might have said stuff there that would have probably been good to get in here.
That's why I always try to rip the recording right away. But
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
but no,
is there anything you'd like? Anything else you'd want to share? Whether it's like a place for people to keep up with you or like any of the Team Canada stuff that you want to plug?
No, shout out to Content Kyle. He's gonna be and Reveal Roundnet. They're gonna be running our content during Worlds. So hopefully we're gonna be dropping some bangers during Worlds with the Kyle C VODs coming out quickly. I'll be creating content for the next 3 weeks for Team Canada, like at Team Canada on Instagram, over in Paris, doing some of that fun social stuff. And then anyone who's watching this, next tournament you go to, just shout out the volunteers, go up to the tournament directors, tell them like at the end of the day when they're stressed and wanting to just get out of it, let them know like they did a great job. Like show them their support. Make sure these people, these big community stakeholders and members know that you care about them, like that you appreciate what they do, because like a lot of TDs don't get the recognition they deserve and they don't get paid, but like hearing players tell you that you ran a good tournament and they had fun, like just like that's what's worth it at the end of the day for all those tournament directors that don't get paid to be there. So that would be my one thing that I'd say like take away from this episode is make sure you go.
It doesn't solve the sustainability problem short term, but it certainly makes people feel good.
Yeah, it won't change the world, but it will make someone smile.
It'll make the world a little bit better, as I think an important thing to be doing when we're all like out here having fun and trying to like give everybody else a good time, whether you're playing or not playing. So
100%.
Sick. I'm excited to follow along with all the stuff. A lot of content. And yeah, I guess you're gonna force me to upload this like in the next 24 hours. So I think I'm gonna leave all the glitches in with the editing and all that. So
yeah,
I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for rolling with the punches technically.
Oh, make sure you tune in because hopefully me and Ben will hit up the commentator table day one at Worlds. Hopefully they'll let us do that.
We'll see. Yeah, trying to see if we can thread the needle on that. There's a lot of commitments that each of us will have at Worlds. So
we'll get one game in. One game.
It'd be sick. We'll commentate game 1 and then game 2 we'll observe.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll come back for game 3 because one of us would make one mistake and be like,
send it to game 3. Sick. All right, let me stop this recording.